Ready for the best summer ever? ID Tech is the original and most trusted tech camp for kids, ages 7 to 17, offering over 50 epic courses like Camp Crunch Labs IRL, BattleBots with take-home bots, AI and machine learning, and more. Camps are all about high-energy fun, new friends, trusted instructors, and exclusive tech partnerships. Experience ID Tech at 75 college campuses nationwide. Visit idtech.com and use code IDTech to save $150 on a week that's guaranteed to be the highlight of your kid's summer.
Instagram teen accounts have built-in protections for who can contact teens and what they see. Learn more about teen accounts at instagram.com/teen accounts.
Here's a shift worth noting. Better healthcare is care that meets patients where they are. United Health Group is bringing it directly to living rooms. This is a win for patients managing chronic conditions. And here's the interesting thing. By closing those care gaps, administering in-home exams, and identifying risks earlier, more diseases can be prevented and patient outcomes can improve. In 2025 alone, United Health Group patients received over 19 million home visits. Learn more at unitedhealthgroup.com/commitment.
Ready for the best summer ever? ID Tech is the original and most trusted tech camp for kids, ages 7 to 17, offering over 50 epic courses like Camp Crunch Labs IRL, BattleBots with take-home bots, AI and machine learning, and more. Camps are all about high-energy fun, new friends, trusted instructors, and exclusive tech partnerships. Experience ID Tech at 75 college campuses nationwide. Visit idtech.com and use code IDTech to save $150 on a week that's guaranteed to be the highlight of your kid's summer.
Instagram teen accounts come with automatic protections for who can contact teens and the content they can see. Learn more about teen accounts at instagram.com/teen accounts.
Hello, I'm Sarah, and yes, we are back with the haunted episodes, as it's now April as promised. As I explained on tomorrow's episode as well, Toby's not with me this week because he ran off for Easter, and he was gone before I could pin him down and get him to record some episodes with me, so I'm going to do this episode on my own. We are going to Yosemite. Now, I've done a bit of a kind of back and forth on this episode because I really, really wanted to include something that isn't necessarily paranormal, but lots of people say there's something strange about it. And that, anyway, I'll explain more later because I don't want to give too much away. I'll get straight into it. Are you ready for the story? In Yosemite National Park, the landscape rises in vast stone walls, cliffs that climb sharply into the sky, and valleys that hold their own kind of quiet far below. It's a place shaped by time and pressure, where water, rock, and air meet in ways that feel both natural and at times unpredictable. Visitors come for the scale of it, the height of the cliffs, the way the light moves across the valley floor, the waterfalls that spill down from above, sometimes gently, sometimes with a force that carries across the entire landscape. One of those falls is Bridal Veil Fall. From a distance, it appears soft. The water drifts as it falls, breaking into mist long before it reaches the ground. On calmer days, it hangs in the air like a veil, giving the place its name. But there are times when that same water doesn't fall at all. it lifts. Visitors standing below have described watching the entire flow of the waterfall turn in mid-air, push sideways, then upward, as though something has taken hold of it and pulled it back toward the cliffs. The mist rises, the air changes, and without warning, the wind arrives. In 2019, a small group travelled to the Yosemite National Park with the intention of hiking up to Half Dome. It was meant to be a straightforward trip. They'd camped nearby, planned an early start, and expected to be on the trail before sunrise, making the climb in the cool hours before the heat of the day set in. The group consisted of 3 men: Daniel, 18 at the time, his uncle Mark, and Mark's friend David. 2 others were with them, but it was the experience shared between the 3 men that would stay with them afterward. They settled in for the night and planned to wake at 4 in the morning. Daniel woke earlier than expected. At around 3:30, he found himself fully awake, without any clear reason. There was no noise that had disturbed him, nothing physical that explained it. He simply opened his eyes and found that he was no longer tired. He lay still for a moment, looking out from his hammock. The light caught his attention first. The moon was unusually bright, casting a pale, even glow across the campsite and the surrounding trees. It lit the space in a way that flattened depth slightly, giving the scene a quality that didn't feel entirely natural. He would later describe the moment as feeling dreamlike, not in a dramatic sense, but in the quiet way that something feels just slightly removed from reality. He tried to go back to sleep but couldn't. Eventually, he woke Mark and David earlier than planned. As they got ready, Mark asked him a question that didn't seem significant at the time. He asked if Daniel had been walking around during the night. Daniel said no, and asked why. Mark told him he had woken briefly and heard footsteps outside the tent. Not the movement of an animal, but something more deliberate, the sound of someone walking. It hadn't lasted long, and there had been no further sign of anything. They moved on from it quickly. They reached the trailhead just before 4:30. The area was quiet, as expected at that time of morning. The road from the parking area led toward the start of the trail, with a small restroom building set off slightly to one side. Davy said he was going to use the bathroom before they began. Daniel walked part of the way with him, then slowed to wait for Mark, who had gone back briefly to the car. By the time they reached the intersection near the trailhead, David had already gone ahead. They waited. At first, there was no reason to think anything was wrong. A few minutes passed, then a few more. After around 10 minutes, Daniel went to check the restroom. It was empty. He returned and told Mark. They assumed he'd gone back to the car. Mark went to check. He wasn't there. They waited longer. By that point, enough time had passed for the situation to feel unusual. There were only a few places David could have gone: the car, the bathroom, the trailhead. He wasn't in any of them. Eventually, they decided to walk up to the trailhead itself. It took only a few minutes. He wasn't there. At that point, Daniel turned back, intending to check the car and the restroom again. He didn't make it that far. He met David on the path walking toward him. There was something immediately off about him. He looked unsettled, slightly disorientated. Not in a dramatic way, but enough to be noticeable. Daniel asked where he'd been. David told him he'd gone to the bathroom, come back out, and found no one there. He assumed they had gone ahead and started walking, so he followed the trail. Daniel explained that they had been waiting the entire time, that they had checked everywhere, that he hadn't been there. David didn't have an explanation. He simply repeated that he had gone to the bathroom. As they walked back toward the trailhead together, David asked where Mark was. Daniel told him he was up ahead. A moment later, he asked again, the same question. Daniel answered again, but noted the repetition. It didn't seem like confusion exactly, more like a delay in processing. At one point, as they crossed a bridge, David noticed a light down near the riverbank and suggested it might be Mark. It wasn't, but the suggestion itself stood out. Nothing about the light matched where Mark would have been. They reached the trailhead and continued with the hike. For a while, everything felt normal. The climb began as expected. The rhythm of the trail settled in. Then, small things began to go missing. A flashlight, a glove, a water bottle. Each item was accounted for at one point, then gone the next. They continued on. The hike itself was uneventful, until the return. By the time they began descending, the light had faded. They switched on their flashlights and made their way back along the trail. At first, the path felt familiar, then gradually less so. Daniel had walked that trail before. He knew the landmarks, the points where the terrain changed, the places where the path narrowed or widened. But as they walked, those reference points didn't appear. The trail continued, longer than it should have. Mark noticed it too. He asked whether it felt like it was taking longer than expected. Daniel agreed. They both had the same sense. They continued walking, expecting the next familiar point. It didn't come. The feeling shifted slowly, not into panic, but into something less defined. A sense that the space around them had changed slightly, that the woods no longer felt like something they were moving through, but something that held them within it. Daniel later described it simply. It felt like the woods were alive. They mentioned the time again, then again, each time with a slight disbelief, as though saying it out loud might correct it. Eventually, it became something they laughed about, not because it was funny, but because it felt too strange not to. And then, without transition, they were back on the final stretch. The trail returned. The landmarks reappeared. The path led them back to the car, as expected. The feeling lifted just as quickly as it had arrived. It wasn't until later that the final detail emerged. After they returned home, Mark's wife mentioned something she hadn't been told. She described a dream. In it, she had seen Mark in a tent, somewhere in a forest. She said she knew there was someone outside, though she couldn't see them clearly. There was a sense of presence, something just beyond the boundary of the tent. She'd woken around 3 a.m, with a feeling that she needed to pray, and she had. That time matched exactly with when Daniel had woken in the night. They hadn't told her about the trip. She had no reason to connect the dream to anything real. And yet, she did. What stays with accounts like that isn't just what happened on the trail, but where it happened. Because Yosemite is not a place that holds still in the way people expect. It's a landscape shaped by extremes, sheer drops, shifting light, narrow paths that move between open ground and dense woodland without warning. The distance between safety and exposure can change in a matter of steps, and the environment itself doesn't always give you time to adjust. People who spend time there often describe moments where the atmosphere shifts without explanation. Not dramatically, not in a way that immediately signals danger, but enough to be noticed. A subtle change in the air, a feeling that something has altered in the space around them. Because Yosemite is known for something else, something that moves through the valley in a way that has been recognised for far longer than the trails and roads that now cross it. A wind. In most places, wind builds gradually. You feel it before you see it. It moves through trees, across open ground, announcing itself in small ways before it fully arrives. In Yosemite, it can be different. The wind here does not always approach. Sometimes it appears. A still moment can hold for long enough to feel settled, and then shift suddenly into movement. The air presses forward with force, carrying dust, mist, and sound with it. It does not always follow a clear direction, and it does not always last. It comes in bursts, strong enough to move water, strong enough to unbalance those standing near exposed edges. And then, just as quickly, it's gone. This wind has a name, not one given by modern visitors, but one that has been part of the valley far longer than the roads and trails that lead into it. It's called Pohono. The name comes from the people who lived in the valley long before it became a national park. The Awana-Chi. For them, the land was not just a place to move through. It was something to be understood, respected, and in certain areas approached with caution. Pohono was not simply a description of the weather. It was a warning. The name is often translated as the evil wind, though that phrasing simplifies something that carries more weight than a single word can hold. It was not evil in the sense of intent, but dangerous in the way it behaved and in the way it appeared. It did not move like ordinary wind. It did not follow the patterns that could be learned and anticipated. It came suddenly, and it came at moments that mattered. Those who knew the valley understood where it moved most strongly. They avoided certain places when the air felt unsettled, and they paid attention to the signs that came before it, because once it arrived, there was very little time to react. Standing near the edge of Yosemite's cliffs, it's not like standing at height in other places. There is no gradual slope, no extended distance between safety and open air. The land drops away sharply, sometimes without warning, creating a boundary that feels absolute. It's in those places that the wind is felt most strongly, not as a steady force, but as something that arrives in a concentrated burst, moving upward along the face of the rock before spilling out across the open space. Visitors describe the sensation not just as wind against the body, but as pressure, something that moves through the space rather than across it. And in those moments, balance matters. At Bridal Veil Fall, behaviour of the wind becomes visible in a way that is difficult to ignore. On calmer days, the water drops cleanly from the cliff, breaking into mist as it falls. It follows gravity in the way you expect, tracing a path downward that feels predictable and steady. But when the Pohono wind arrives, that pattern changes. The falling water begins to shift in midair. The mist lifts and spreads, no longer dropping toward the ground, but moving sideways, then rising Entire sections of the fall appear to be caught and held, suspended for a moment before being pushed back toward the rock face. It gives the impression that the direction of space itself has changed. Visitors often notice the effect before they feel the full force of the wind. The movement of the water becomes a kind of warning, a visible sign that something has entered the valley that cannot yet be felt at ground level. Then the air follows. For the Owonachi people, this was not simply a striking natural feature. The wind had behaviour. It appeared suddenly, without the kind of gradual build that allows people to prepare for it. It moved through specific parts of the valley more strongly than others, particularly around the cliffs and the falls, and it carried with it a force that could alter balance in an instant. Those were not observations made once and forgotten. They were repeated, recognised, and passed on. Certain areas were approached with care. Certain conditions were read as warning. The wind was not something to be challenged or ignored, but something to be understood in the same way as any other force within the landscape. Over time, that understanding became part of the language used to describe it. Pohono, a word that did not separate the physical form from the experiential, but held both together. One of the details that appears consistently in modern accounts is the moment just before the wind arrives. It's not always obvious, and not everyone notices it, but those who do describe a similar shift. The air changes, not in temperature, but in weight. The space feels briefly still, in a way that is different from ordinary calm. The surrounding sounds seem to drop away, or at least recede enough that the quiet becomes more noticeable. It is a short moment, sometimes only a few seconds, and then the wind follows. When it arrives, it does not behave like a steady current. It comes in a concentrated burst, moving through the valley with a force that feels directional and contained at the same time. People standing near exposed areas have described the sensation of being pushed, not gradually, but all at once, as though the air has shifted position. Loose materials lift, mist is carried upward, clothing pulls sharply in one direction before settling again. Then just as quickly, the force drops away. The air returns to stillness. The change is immediate enough that it leaves behind a sense of contrast rather than continuity. In a place like Yosemite, the edge is never far away. The landscape is defined by height, and the boundary between solid ground and open air can be abrupt. Paths run close to drop-offs, viewpoints are positioned near sheer descents, and the natural formations of the valley do not always provide gradual transitions. It's in these areas that the wind carries its greatest effect. A sudden shift in balance near a cliff is not something that can always be corrected. Even a small movement, if unexpected, can change footing enough to require immediate adjustment. And when that movement is caused by something that arrives without warning, the margin for a response becomes very small. There are moments in the valley where nothing feels wrong. The air is still, the space is quiet. Everything settles into place the way you expect it to. And then something changes. It isn't always obvious at first. There's no sound to mark it, no movement that clearly signals what's about to happen. Just a subtle shift, a sense that the space around you is no longer quite the same as it was a moment before. The stillness doesn't feel calm anymore. People who've spent time in Yosemite Valley describe it in similar ways, even when they don't realise they're describing the same thing. A sudden awareness of the space around them, a feeling that something has changed, though nothing visible has. A pause in the natural rhythm of the place is the kind of feeling that makes you stop without knowing why, that makes you look up, or around, or behind you. Not because you've heard something, but because something in you has registered that you should. And then the moment passes, or rather, it's replaced. The air moves, not gradually, not building in the way that wind usually does, but all at once. A force that arrives within the space rather than across it, pressing forward, shifting balance, lifting whatever it catches. It lasts only seconds, and then it's gone. But what stays isn't the movement, it's the feeling that came before it.
Ready for the best summer ever? ID Tech is the original and most trusted tech camp for kids, ages 7 to 17, offering over 50 epic courses like Camp Crunch Labs IRL, BattleBots with take-home bots, AI and machine learning, and more. Camps are all about high-energy fun, new friends, trusted instructors, and exclusive tech partnerships. Experience ID Tech at 75 college campuses nationwide. Visit idtech.com and use code IDTech to save $150 on a week that's guaranteed to be the highlight of your kid's summer.
Instagram teen accounts have automatic protections for what teens see and who can contact them, plus time management tools. And Instagram will continue adding built-in safety features to help create age-appropriate experiences. Learn more about teen accounts and Instagram's ongoing work to protect teens online at instagram.com/teen accounts.
Yes, and if you didn't get that, I was talking about the wind, the po-ho-no. I really, really wanted to include it because I just can imagine it, like, winding around you. I'm saying that we've got like the beginning of Storm Dave. How romantic, Dave. Like, there's nothing wrong with the name Dave. My dad's called Dave. But naming a storm Dave doesn't give you that kind of energy, does it? Well, it doesn't me. Anyway, what would I call it? Delta or Damien. Something with a bit more rather than, Storm Dave, come in. Storm Dave's coming in. I love the idea of that wind, and there are a few of these winds in different places, and I'll do a little bit more research and see if I can put an episode together just about, quote, evil winds, because I found them fascinating, and it's one of my favourite things, wind, because it just, something about it makes me feel alive and kind of on the precipice of something. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just because it reminds me of spooky, but I just really love the wind. And when I haven't had a windy day for a while, I do feel it. I get wind withdrawal. I'm just talking a load of rubbish now, aren't I? But it's completely true. I hope everyone's doing okay. Remember, this is our safe zone from the outside world. If you'd like to come and join us on social media, all of the links are in the podcast notes. And I will see you there. I'm sort of coming in and out at the moment because I'm just getting over a big hurdle in life without saying too much. And hopefully we're just getting through it. Well, that's it from me today. I hope you enjoyed, and I will catch you again tomorrow for the main episode. Take care, everyone.
Instagram teen accounts have automatic protections for what teens see and who can contact them, plus time management tools. And Instagram will continue adding built-in safety features to help create age-appropriate experiences. Learn more about teen accounts and Instagram's ongoing work to protect teens online at instagram.com/teenaccounts.
The stories told on the Whispering Woods are inspired by historical records, witness reports, and local folklore. While every effort is made to research and represent events accurately, some details, names, and locations may differ from official accounts or have been changed out of respect for those involved. These episodes are created for storytelling and entertainment purposes and should not be considered definitive fact or investigative journalism.